Okay, so we're going to create a slip knot. The slip knot is going to be the first stitch in our blanket. I've got my big ball of yarn here. This is the tail of my yarn. The end of the yarn that is attached to the ball of yarn is called your working yarn end. So here's my working yarn end, tail. I am going to take my working yarn end and flop it over my tail so I'm looking at a 9. I am looking at a 9, and I'm going to take the my 2 fingers, palm up 2 fingers, and I'm going to go down into that loop. I'm going to grab the working yarn end and hand that to my 2 scissor fingers right here. Just tighten them up a little bit. I'm going to pull my scissor fingers up through that loop and hold. I'm going to grab the tail and I'm going to tighten this knot right here. That's what I'm tightening. So I've got a hold of the tail and this loop. Okay. Now there's my slip knot. Okay. I'm going to tighten this down to a 2-inch stitch because we were going to be doing 2-inch stitches in our blanket. So I'm going to grab the working yarn end and pull. I'm kind of holding on to where that knot's at and pull that down to a 2-inch stitch. So there's my 2-inch stitch. Okay. So again, to make our slip knot, here's our tail, here's our working yarn end. I'm going to take the working yarn end, flop it over, palm up 2 fingers down into that loop. Now I've got my scissor fingers coming out the top or bottom top of that loop, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to grab the working yarn and hand it to my 2 scissor fingers, pull them up through, hold tightly, grab the tail, tighten that knot. There's our slip knot. Grab the working yarn end and pull that down to a 2-inch stitch. Okay, now one thing that I want to mention is our tail, we actually want this to end up being 10 to 12 inches, so that is just barely 10 inches. I'd probably make it a little bit longer. Here's another slip knot. One more time. Flop that over. We've got our 9. We're looking at a 9. Palm up 2 fingers down into that loop. Just take your 2 fingers and go right down in there. Now you've got your fingers sticking out the top there. You're going to hand the working yarn to your 2 fingers. Pull that up through and hold. Grab the tail, and I'm going to pull here, and I'm going to pull here on the tail. And that tightens that knot. And now there you can see I have a longer tail there. That's about right. We want 10 to 12 inches. You don't want it any shorter than 10 inches. If it's longer than 12 inches, that's okay, but we just really don't want it shorter than 10 inches. And I'm going to grab the working yarn end now to tighten this stitch. Tighten it down to a 2-inch stitch. And that'll be the first stitch in our blanket. Okay, one more time. Here's our tail, working yarn end, flop it over so we have a 9, palm up 2 fingers, down into that loop, grab the working yarn, pull it up through, hold, grab the tail, tighten the knot, there we go. There's our tail, it's at least 10 inches, and now we're going to tighten up this stitch right here down. We're going to tighten it down to a 2-inch stitch. So pull on the working yarn end, and I just kind of hold that area by the knot right there and tighten that down to a 2-inch stitch. So that's going to be the first stitch in our blanket right there.